Hello. Hello.
Sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, very good afternoon. Today we'll
afternoon,
start. Today we'll start poetry. Okay.
Wait.
One of you please read poetry.
Okay, sir.
అన్ని 10th నుంచి మొదలు పెడితే డిగ్రీ వరకు అన్ని పెట్టాం 10th లో వచ్చి యూ ఉంటుంది ఇంటర్ లో యూ ఉంటుంది డిగ్రీలో ఏం లేదు డబ్ల్యూ పడి ఓకే డిగ్రీ రాలేదు సార్ రాలేదు
Sir, page number 100.
You check the unit of that paper. Please check it.
Please, sir, page number 100.
Yeah.
Same word, same
The poetry is about Sean Nelson's poetry, sir.
No, here petticoat green. You start from that. Yeah, can anyone of you say the definition of the poetry?
Poetry is divine. Poetry is imagination.
Okay.
It is about the feelings of the poet.
Okay.
Think of emotions.
It is spontaneous overflow of emotions.
By whom?
It provides a sensory impression.
Okay.
That is about Wordsworth, sir. Spontaneous overflow of emotions is Wordsworth.
Okay. Huh? Right. Yeah. Okay.
Expressions and the feelings also.
Okay, fine. What you do here? You read one of the poet's biography. Okay. Yeah.
Sean Nelson poetry. Of all the Australian poets, the most elusive and deceptive is perhaps. May I continue?
Yeah. You start the biography of one of the poets. Okay. The classroom.
Anyone?
Other started. Yeah, please read first paragraph of that poet's biography.
Okay. Of all the Australian poets, the most elusive and deceptive is perhaps Sean Nelson, whose poetry appears rather conventional and unimpressive at the outset. There is a strange coincidence between what Nelson's poetry sounds or looks like contrary to what it actually is, and Nelson's own colorless life as a manual laborer without any formal education, except for a year or two, which serves as a package to his highly sensitive poetic vision. What is unique about these aspects of Nelson's poetry and life is a total lack of self-consciousness or a willingness to close the gap between the two. If one can continue this argument with regard to his poetry, one can see an inevitable restraint in his poetic sensibility to sound impressive or spectacular because of its total commitment to the kind of experience whose pressures are unusual and unique. But how dangerous it is to theorize on the poetic achievement of so elusive a poet, because when one attempts anything like a sophisticated elucidation of his creative processes, one realizes the stupidity of such an endeavor in the presence of a disarmingly simple poetry that has bloomed to a compelling, compelling presence without any hangover of its gestation. Over, sir. First paragraph is over, sir.
Sir, you are in mute, sir.
Am I audible to all?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Ashok, sir, your mic is muted, I think so. Hello, sir.
No, he's away. He must be away. What happened, sir?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir, we can able to hear you.
Hello. Hello.
There's a background
Yes, sir,
noise from your end too.
Yeah. So here, Nielsen had that kind of unconventional stand about the poetic genius and the creativity. The poetry emerged from that kind of African background, which is with that kind of new idea of the ground reality of that contemporary age. So here, whatever is poetry is from this kind of background shows that unconventional, which is deviated from the conventional order of the tradition, or that could be any kind of thing of that African literature. So here, if you look at Nielsen's background, then you can understand in following paragraph. Can any one of you read the following paragraph, please?
Yeah.
Hello.
By way of making a harmless and obvious generalization, before attempting a close study of some of his poems, one can say that the two dominant themes we find in Nielsen's poetry are love and nature. Love is intertwined with nature so inextricably that it is hard to think of them as two distinct entities, while nature, especially spring, is the medium of love's expression, and the presence of various flowers of spring and a riot
Please
of
continue
colors.
the following paragraph.
She read the first paragraph, sir.
Yeah. You read the second paragraph.
I'm reading the second one. Can someone clarify on this? It's on page 100, right? Those who are following the textbook.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You read the second paragraph, please. Hello.
Sir, I am reading the second one.
Read the second paragraph for a while, please. Second and third paragraphs. Okay.
Yeah. If someone like to read, anyone can come forward.
Just you continue, ma'am. You have read no up to Riot.
Yeah, riot.
From
of-
there you,
it's
from there you
riot.
can continue.
All right. Riot of colors used symbolically highlight and capture the several moods of love, life, and also death. In his poem, The Scent o' the Lover, we find Nielsen himself conscious of this play of colors. A small snippet from the poem. I am assailed by colors, by night, by day. In a mad boat, they would take me, red miles away. All images and symbols drawn from nature are made to serve love, which is the converging point from where the poet develops his angle of vision. Interestingly, love in itself is not Nielsen's ultimate in the hierarchy of values or perceptions, but an extended medium through which he can have communion with life as a whole.
You read the following paragraph. Okay.
Okay, sir. Love is the focal point in his poetry that generates all activity, but paradoxically, without any immediate attention drawn to such a powerful function, as if one is made vaguely aware of the long unseen level that sets things into motion in a mysterious manner. Now, to the poems themselves. Can I continue, sir?
I think sir is a bit busy.
Yeah,
That is why maybe
I
he's
can
asking
get
us
that.
to read.
Yeah. Maybe he's keeping us engaged, asking us to read a paragraph by paragraph.
You continue, madam.
Yeah, that's what he must be.
Yeah. Maybe we can take turns and read as long as he asks us to continue.
I think this will today's session will be reading practice.
Not really,
Teachers
but
will do now in our schools also. Makes children to read and they'll do time
Yeah.
pass. It's in the same way only.
Sir is busy, I think, because
Be
background
aware,
noise.
recording is going on. Be aware.
Nobody will have that much time to listen our conversations. They kept it in the left it.
Yeah, really.
శైలజ గారు కానీ అక్కడ రికార్డ్ అవుతుంది కదా.
ఇక్కడ అవుతుంది కానీ ఇక్కడ ఎవరు వినరు కదా.
విన్నారనుకోండి బాగోదు కదా. ఈలోపు చదువుతుంటే మనకు కొంచెం అర్థమవుద్ది కదా పోయము
Yes.
కదా. ఇట్ విల్ బి యూస్ఫుల్ టు అస్ నో.
Asmita ma'am, your voice is very nice. Please continue to read. At least we will get something.
Okay.
Really
I
good
think-
voice.
Thank you, ma'am. I think Nielsen's poetry, we see 3 poems covered in this unit 3. Petticoat Green, it is the white plum tree and the
వాయిస్
wedding.
తగ్గిపోయిందంటరా నాని.
Ma'am, are you referring to me? Or to somebody else there?
Ma'am, you please go ahead.
All right, sir. Yeah, we see 3 poems that were discussed in Unit 3, Petticoat Green. It is the white plum tree and the wedding in September. Maybe the first part of the, what do you call, from the biography to the poem's paraphrasing. We see on page 102 and 103 the paraphrasing of Petticoat Green poem and the wedding in September. I think what I feel is the 2 important points that they covered from this unit is the theme of Petticoat Green poem and in the white plum tree. Also, besides the contribution of Sean Nilsson's to Australian poetry. Actually, I have I'm first time coming across this poet. Does anyone have aware of this poet, Sean Nielsen? Let's have an interaction or discussion till the sir turns back. Anybody?
Oh, but I'm just checking him in this Google.
Okay. Maybe he's an Australian poet, I
Oh.
guess.
He's an African, no?
Yes. No. It is written in the first
Yeah,
paragraph.
in the
no,
very first
Australian
line,
poet.
we see the introduction of this poet. Of all the Australian poets, the most elusive and deceptive is perhaps Sean Nielsen, whose poetry appears rather conventional and unimpressive at the
Because
outset.
of his own colorless life.
Yeah. There are 2 words used, see in the second line, conventional, which means old and traditional, and unimpressive, which did not attract the ears of the readers, I guess, at the outset. But slowly or gradually over the period of time, I think he made a mark in literature through his writings. No, what do you say? Otherwise, they wouldn't have covered this man's topic in our literature. Okay, in the meantime, I'll just read about petticoat. Sorry, someone there?
What is this poem in our lesson name?
Ma'am, it is Unit 3, Poetry, Sean Nielsen's poetry. We are discussing all about Sean Nielsen's introduction and his poetry, the 3 poems of his, the distinctive poems of Sean Nielsen.
Good thing.
Yeah.
Guys, in the second para they gave, no? This his poetry is about love and nature.
Yeah.
Love is
and nature.
intertwined with nature. That's why they used all these different colors. Red miles.
Yeah, no. They meant to say in the paragraph too that the dominant themes in this poetry are all about which rotated about love and nature, where
Yeah.
they show the intertwined connection between love and nature. See, love is intertwined with nature. They imply the meaning to the readers here that it is hard to think of these two as different entities. Like they meant to say they both are interlinked and together. While everyone knows nature is fondly appreciated by everybody of every age. And here, through his poetry, what I think the writer says is especially, the nature looks so beautiful during the spring season, right? Where we see different colors in the nature, and it's the most loved season by any human. So usually when we teach literature like poetry, we symbolize nature. We talk about all the elements of nature to highlight the importance of the creation, and how poets beautifully they describe their thoughts, their vivid imaginations through their description. I mean, that's my belief. And I feel, I could very much resonate with the thoughts of Sean Nielsen's poetry from this, the topic that is covered in our book. Maybe he himself played a very conscious role in displaying the different variety of colors. Maybe one of these 3 poems are the most exemplary for based on love and nature. Maybe his angle of vision may be interestingly portrayed by his writings. Is someone there?
Yes,
Yeah, what is
we are
it?
listening to you.
गाओ हिंदी क्लास चल रही है, गाओ नाटक बहुत हो गए तुम्हारे.
Harsha
जल्दी
ma'am,
आओ.
Arshia
Harsha
madam,
ma'am, could you please mute yourself?
See, guys, I found these details in Google. John Sean Nielsen, born at the South Australian town called Penola. And he is a son of Scottish-born parents. One of the finest lyric poets in English during the first half of 20th century. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And he was born in 1872 to a Presbyterian household with limited schooling. He is called the poet of the colors. So it is a name that he is called as poet of the colors. He read Bible, Pilgrim's Progress, the Bulletin, etc. He also read works of English romantic authors as well as Victorians, and also ballads of Australian bush. I think you know this one, no? Bush writings. And then by 1897, he has published 18 poems, which along with over 30 other unpublished pieces. But more success came his way with new poems published in 1927, followed by collected poems in 1934. This much. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Are you there?
I'm extremely sorry. Actually, extremely sorry. Okay. So as you all know that the Shaw Nielsen's poetry, and poetry is with this kind of
Sir,
background.
your voice is not clear, sir.
Here the poet who had this kind of background.
Sir, your voice is not clear, sir.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
So there's a phone ringing in the background.
Background music noise, I can
Now is
say.
it okay?
So much of disturbance, sir.
Yeah. Actually, I was in a meeting. I'm extremely sorry. Okay. So, are you able to understand me?
Yes, sir. Continue,
Is
sir.
it audible? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, if you look at the Nielsen's poetry or love and nature, love is intertwined with nature so inextricably that it is hard to think of them as two distinct entities. So, if you look at the poetry which is with the love and nature, especially spring, is the medium of love expression, and the presence of various flowers of spring and a riot of colors used symbolically highlight and capture the several moods of love, life, and also death. In his poem, The Scent of the Lover, we find Nielsen himself conscious of this play of colors. So here, in his poetry, the aspects which are related to nature as well as the love, and in his poetry, how it is with multiple aspects, play of colors, not one color, himself conscious of this play of colors. If you look at the page number 100, I am assailed by colors by night, by day. In a mad boat, they would take me red miles away. So, if you look at the poem from this kind of multiple colors, and in the opening of the poem, with this, I am assailed by colors. So here, nature is with ample of its greenery, colors, and he emphasized that he himself moved, he himself sailed along with the colors by night and day. So here, in one's life, that how day and night are part, and in a mad boat they would take me red miles away. All images and symbols drawn from nature are made to serve love, which is the converging point from where the poet develops his angle of vision. Interestingly, love in itself is not Nielsen's ultimate in the hierarchy of values or perceptions, but an extended medium through which he can have communion with life as a whole, and at rare moments with something beyond the frontiers of ordinary human perceptions. So here, hello students.
Yes, sir.
Hello. So, if you look at the romantic poetry by Percy Shelley, John Keats, and Wordsworth, their poetry also emerged from the beauty of the nature.
Yeah.
And they believed nature as God, and they are the pantheists who believes nature as God. So here, in Nielsen's poetry, the way how he looked at nature with multiple colors, not one color, and he wishes to show that nature with this kind of multiple colors, that in our life we have day and night, and here he wishes to go beyond the ordinary human perceptions. For instance, if you look at Alfred Tennyson's poem Ulysses, there he says in the concluding line, to follow knowledge like sinking stars beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So the poetry as a vehicle, and the poet always tries to fly upon the wings of poesy. Similarly, the poet here is going beyond the perceptions of ordinary human. So here he is more genius, philosophical, and how he is going beyond the perceptions of ordinary human beings. Love is the focal point in his poetry that generates all activity, but paradoxically, without any immediate attention drawn to such a powerful function, as if one is made vaguely aware of the long unseen lever that sets things into motion in a mysterious manner. So here, if you look at, can you hear me? Hello, students.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at, please just a minute. If you look at Shakespeare dramas, are all with the family relations as well as the love. And there you will see, because of the blindness of the love, there was misjudgment, misconceptions between the husband and wife, or else if you look at the King Lear, the father and the children. So here, the love which is universally with that kind of sense of belongingness. But here in Nielsen's poetry, how his poetry generates all activity, but paradoxically, without any immediate attention drawn to such a powerful function, as if one is made vaguely aware of the long unseen lever that sets things into motion in a mysterious manner. For instance, if you look at the definition of the poetry, poets are unacknowledged by the society or the world, and poetry is more than philosophy. So if you look at that, how the poetic genius and the creativity is focused on the nature and the love, which is more philosophical and beyond the understand of the common man or an ordinary man. So the poets, their concerns of the love and nature differs with the ordinary people's understanding of their nature as well as the love. So if you look at Nielsen's poetry from this kind of background, then you can understand how he had tried to philosophize the poetry from this kind of background, and how he wishes to uplift the ordinary man to that great level to know what is nature and love. Now to the poems themselves, and here one is faced with the paucity of material in the Indian situation. That is, attention is therefore focused on a slender collection of poems that has by chance come one's way. Glancing through them, the eye catches an interesting title. Song B, Delicate, is a poem characteristic of Nielsen's delicacy of feeling and execution. A sense of plenitude is created in the first stanza. For instance, if you look at the, hello students, are you all here? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Is it audible? Yeah. So for instance, if you look at any age poetic genius and the creativity, there you will find that sense, feeling, tone and intention. So similarly, you will find the aesthetic sense. For instance, if you look at the Rabindranath Tagore poetry, Sarojini Naidu poetry, then you will see aesthetic sense through the Navarasas, how it will emerges from different backgrounds and different sources of nature or love. Similarly here, Nielsen's poetry too had that kind of touch, and it has that kind of sense of feeling, tone and intention, and it sensitizes the subtle thought in subtle expression, and it has that kind of uniqueness. So in the following stanza, let your song be delicate, the skies declare no war, the eyes of lovers wakes everywhere. So here, when he is talking about that kind of sky, if you look at the concluding lines of Alfred Tennyson's Ulysses, to follow knowledge like sinking stars beyond the utmost bound of human thought. So when you wish to have that kind of sensitivity through the poetic genius and the creativity, you have to go beyond the utmost bound of human thought. So here, no more the eyes of lovers wake every way. So this is what, but soon there is a note of creeping sadness beginning from the next stanza. How faint a thing is love, little love crying under the spring. There seems to be a recovery from the sad mood when we, are with this kind of sadness, as well as the image in the penultimate stanza. The bees are home, all their days love is sunken, safe in the comb. As one proceeds to the last stanza with an apparently positive shift in the poem, thanks to the rich sensuous image of the bees, love is sunken, safe in the comb. There is a startling recurrence of the earlier note. Death is abroad. Oh, the black season, the deep, the dim. On the surface, this development looks uneven and penultimate stanza and needlessly affirmative needlessly, because the context does not call for it, but a careful reading shows that the stanza is after all transitional one. The words sunken and safe hint as death is abroad. So for instance, if you look at the poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, Emily Dickinson's, how we are into the lap of the nature with the love of our life, and we may going to meet death, but it is abroad of the next stanza. The bees have their day, love sunken in the comb, which has a faint suggestion of the risk they have taken. This idea becomes clear in the word safe, for from the human angle, the honey is safe in the comb, and it is time to drive them away in the interest of honey. So here, if you look at the way how the poet had tried to bring that kind of paradoxical nature of love and his poetry, on the whole, the contrast between the eyes of lovers wake everywhere of the opening stanza and death is abroad of the final stanza. So when you look at the birth in the opening stanza as well as the death in the closing stanza. So here you will see the paradoxical nature coexisting in a poem to show that how is poetry is with the paradoxical nature. And here, if you look at the final stanza as presented here with that kind of ominous last lines, the poet invests love with a quaint strength, otherwise a faint thing. So here, if you look at Shakespeare's dramas with the thematic concerns of the love and its blindness, and how it deceives that kind of reality of the relationship between the father and daughters in terms of the King Lear. So when we look at all these, then here the paradoxical element of the first stanza with the opening eyes towards the love by the lovers and the closing with death is abroad. And if you look at love is a strength, otherwise a faint thing. So here it always directs the people towards the ignorance of the reality. So here you will be fainted with that kind of thing, and it is the strength. So Petticoat Green, an important poem of Nilsson's, a very different aspect of love. So here generally if we look at the universal concept of the love with understanding of human nature, but here Petticoat Green is quite different, and Nilsson had tried to bring that kind of paradoxical nature of the love. The green petticoats, a tender thing, tender as love or dew, is symbolic of painting, poetry, and art itself with all its creative potentialities. So for instance, if you look at the poem from this kind of background of the nature and the love, and here the artistic excellence and the creativity or the potentialities of the poetic genius and the creativity shows that subtle thought in subtle expression. For instance, here, if you look at the poem from this kind of paradoxical background, then you will see how here it is subtle thought in subtle expression with the sensitivity, creativity, feeling, tone, and intention. So if you look at the figures of speech, figures of sound, figures of comparison between the two dissimilar things, one side is the opening is nothing but a birth, and the other side of the closing is nothing but a death. So if you look at this kind of paradoxical nature of Nilsson's poetry, then his own desire to see the elusive and abstract things concretized by paint. So here if you look at that abstract and some other things are reflecting with the reality. So here in Petticoat Green, he had this kind of paradoxical nature to bring the eyes of the lovers as they are going to have the openness to see or to awake their eyes, and the other side the death is abroad. So here they have to close their whatever the awareness of the love. So for instance, if you look at Wordsworth's poetry, tables turned, up, my friend, open your eyes and close your meddling intellects. So here Wordsworth too had established that kind of beauty of nature. If you are going away from the nature, you have to come back to that nature. You have to return to the nature to follow the nature. If you look at Alexander Pope's concept of return to the nature and follow the nature. So this is what here Nilsson had, this kind of touch of the paradoxical elements in terms of the nature and love. Hello students. Hello, are you all here with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
please, we'll see Petticoat Green. Paint me joy in a whistling dance and gloom on a heavy hill. Paint me all that the madmen see when they speak to the sullen skies. It is not merely the joys and happiness of mankind that the poet wishes to see painted. Paint me lilies and summer maids and the skeletons, all are clean. It will all come easily. Mournful man, if you paint me a petticoat green. For instance, if you look at the way how he is trying to locate his concerns towards the nature and how it has the multiple colors and how he wishes to describe that nature with this kind of petticoat green. He wishes to say that paint me a petticoat green, and here, so all are clean in the eyes of the artist, whose sense of detachment and objectivity all allows him to view everything with equanimity. So here you look at the way how poetry is more than philosophy, and how poets are with this kind of uniqueness to see that everything with that kind of equal concern. They never and ever disowns anything of the nature or love. They will equally treat all the aspects, no matter of different colors in the nature. Here, their concern is equal. The interesting thing here is that it will all come easily if you paint me a petticoat green, which means love, whose symbol is petticoat green. Here is the generator of all emotions and feelings. So here, when you look at the way how, is creativity with the generation of emotions and feelings. So as we know that here, the way how poetry is more than philosophy, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So this is what you can understand how this poet had tried to look at the nature with multiple colors, and how he wishes to paint the petticoat in green color, and how he viewed with that kind of equanimity as a person with this kind of humanity. The interesting thing here is that it will all come easily if you paint. So love has an auspiciousness and divinity too, as we see in another poem. So if you look at the way how his strategy is shifting from one poem to the another poem, the girl with a black hair, her lips were a red pearl to set men quivering, and in her feet there lived the egg and the green lilt of the spring, and latter her eyes were blue as the high heaven. Where God is always near, the moment of love is the moment of vision, bringing forth the blissful joy, the ecstasy of living, as we notice in the hour is lost. For instance, if you look at the worldly love, which is longing for material benefits, and if you look at the way how the poets are unconcerned to the material love, and if you look at that kind of their concern from this kind of universality, equality, and the way how they are going beyond the ordinary human understanding of the nature, or mysterious sense of the beauty of the nature. So this is what you can see how the poet had tried to look at the poetic genius and creativity with this kind of stand, that how poets differ with this kind of love of the ordinary people, and how they are going to take the reader beyond the human perceptions, maybe here worldly material benefits, or maybe lust. So here when you look at the poetic genius and the creativity from this kind of background, then the hour is lost was ever hour so sweet, fruitful of blessings, friends, and honeyed words. The sunlight in our faces, at our feet, the world bright, beautiful its flocks and words. Oh, happy time! Why did we stand downcast? We should have leapt for love, but now the hour is past. So here, the way how in this poet, of his concerns, in Petticoat Green, the poet makes the painter present the various hues of life. In the wedding in September, it is the musician who sings of life and death. So here, the poetic genius and the creativity always tries to go beyond the structure of the contemporary society, and they wish to paint that whatever their poetic genius and creativity with multiple colors, and who sings as a musician of life and death. It is not for only happiness. It is with the mixed emotions and feelings of the poetic genius and the creativity. So this is what here you will see the poet is with this kind of mixed opinions. One is the birth and the other one is death. And here if you look at that kind of happiness and sadness, so here the poet's concern is universal and equal in the nature as well as love. So this is what we can see in Petticoat Green, that how the poet appealed with his human concern as a poet with this kind of universality. So we'll see the second poem, The Wedding in September. He played the darkness into death and stood where joy had been. The bridegroom could not see the bride or know what love could mean. He played of maids and merriment, and the young blood of the rover of sacraments. He played, and dolls, and the baby joy of clover. So there is a remarkable detachment both in the tone of the poem and in the musician's role. For instance, if you look at John Keats' poetry of romantic age, then you will see that P.B. Shelley, how he differs with the Wordsworth, though they are from the same age. So this is what how he differs with the Petticoat Green in the wedding in September. So here the way how he had that kind of experience of his human concerns, and how he differs with the poem of Petticoat Green, and here the way how joy and sorrows of life is eased out in whispers, as it were, without any spectacular gestures, to prove or to reassure oneself of the pressures of inner experience. So here, the way how he is unconcerned to the joy and sorrows of human life, whether it is a marriage or a funeral ceremony, no matter, a poet he has that kind of uniqueness, subtle thought in subtle expression, and to show that kind of paradoxical nature in his poetry, that no matter of joy and sorrow, or happiness or the kind of sadness, no matter of the life or death, all are with that kind of stand of the equal treatment. So here you can see that the poem is with this kind of song, and the bird, like the musician, the artist sings in ecstasy. So here the poet had that kind of voice of his mellifluousness, and he has that kind of understanding of the nature as well as the love from this kind of extraordinary background of the philosophy, whatever he concerned towards the nature as well as the love. So he had his heaven God. For love he shakes the tree. He knoweth the falls and fade, and the deeps of deep thing. How shall I know this bird who sings and sings and sings? So here if you look at the Ode to Nightingale by John Keats, and how he had the influence of that cuckoo bird's music, and which is mellifluous and which draws his attention no matter of his brother's sudden demise, but he was into that kind of whatever the mellifluous voice influences him to have the happiness. So here he says, I am not the envious upon thine happiness, because here the cuckoo bird is with the mellifluous voice, with the merry happiness, and here the poet who is in the sadness. So here he had tried to look at the bird which is singing a song which is unconcerned to the nature as well as the love or the material benefits of the society. So here, as if the song of the bird teases the poet out of thought, here we deeply find the intrigued heart himself, not without a feeling of the deeps of deep things. So here you can see that how this poet had the touch of that unconcerned nature of the bird, as well as how he had tried to look at that mellifluous voice of the bird, which he lacks. Consider another poem. It is the White Plum Tree, where there is a celebration of life and love. The exuberance of simply being, the beauty and joy of creation is communicated with images that are so unusual but compellingly appropriate to suit the poet's own angle of vision. Here, if you will see the poem with this kind of background, it is a white plum tree, 7 days of days fair, as a bride goes combing her joy of hair, as a peacock doe with golden eyes 10 paces over the oranges lies. It is a white plum tree. Her passion tells, as a young maid, rustling she so excels. So here he had compared the tree with a bride who has that kind of happiness whenever she gets married. So here the way how nature is equally with a bride, and he compares between the white plum tree and the bride is fully achieved in the final stanza of the plum tree. In that, as a young maid rustling she so excels, even a very ordinary word so is made to perform the function of conveying all the plum tree now stands for. So here when you look at the bride as well as the plum tree, then they are very close to each other with that kind of happiness and freshness. So here the way how he looked at a tree and bride here with this kind of equality of their passion. So here when you look at the poem of Nielsen, and then here we can see how he conveys the beyond the borders of human consciousness, beyond the borders of human consciousness. So here it trespasses into the other side of the human consciousness. He wishes to demolish the borders of human consciousness to show the right path of the human life, of their love as well as the concerns of the nature. So here there is a strange light, not of the sky that lives somewhere in the orange tree. It is a young girl who is capable of an instinctive recognition of this light, whereas the adult speaker strains hard to grapple with it, like the Wordsworthian child who is the father of man. The girl in the poem is in effortless communion with the light on the orange tree. There calls no voice, no music beats on me, but it is almost sound. It falls this evening on the orange tree. Note that striking similarity between these lines and Emily Dickinson is almost the same context. So here, as we all know that, hello, can you hear me? Hello, students.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Sir.
Yeah. So here, if you look at the Wordsworthian, concept of child is the father of man. Yeah. So if you look at that, how we have to learn from the childhood, and which is free from the worldly material sense of belonging. Here, the poet had tried to establish that concerns of the world is not conclusion. A species stands beyond invisible as music. but positive as sound, it beckons and it baffles. Coming back to Nielsen's poem, the girl, after all the happiness talk of the elder who waits to see there is light, a step called this evening on the orange tree, shows a marked development in her relationship with the orange tree. Plague me no longer now, for I am listening like the orange tree. So here in Nielsen's poetry, that how he had tried to trespass the boundaries of the love and nature of the ordinary human perception, and he wishes to elevate the reader to have the concerns of the love and nature without any kind of second thought, with the kind of happiness of the birth as well as the death. So here Nielsen's poetry is its flowery delicacy that stems from a deep-rooted strength without having any outward allegiance to seed or soil. So here you can see that how Nielsen had achieved this kind of paradoxical nature. And if you look at this kind of binary oppositions of human life, we should be unconcerned to the birth and death of our human life. And he elevates the reader to go beyond the ordinary human perceptions and to know that the sun is up. Speak not of death, it is a merry morn. A glittering bow has danced into a tree. And here he mentioned that blue flower, the world is woman in velvet. So the complexity and richness of experience of Nielsen's poetry shows that how he is with this kind of naked language, as Judith Wright comments appropriately on the structure of Nielsen's poem, and he says Australian poetry up to 1920. So here Nielsen's poetry is with this kind of creativity, subtle thought in subtle expression, and here he developed that kind of narrative shape with that kind of seriousness of human life to have the unconcerned material benefits of the love as well as the nature. So here we can see that how we can have the understanding of love and nature from our personal point of view. But here the poet philosophizes the concept of love and the nature are part of human life. We should not suffer, or we should not feel to have that kind of ecstasy if it is a birth or a death, no matter how he had that kind of unconcerned nature towards the material benefits of the world. So this is what here in poetic genius and creativity, he had established this kind of beyond the utmost bound of human thought, and how he had elevated the reader to go beyond the structure of the nature and love to show that kind of truth and pantheism, and the way how poetry is more than philosophy. So here if we look at that his poetry from this kind of paradoxical background, that we can understand how human life is with the stand of the negation, which is making sense of that how human life is not suffered with the death. It will be regeneration of the other birth. So here, hello students. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
here,
sir.
if you look at ordinary understanding of people that they may be happy with the birth and they may be sad with the death. But here he says that we should be unconcerned towards the birth of happiness and death of sadness. So here he engaged the paradoxical elements of happy and sadness, birth and death together to have in our human life, because it is not end of our life. And here you can see that how he had tried to look at all these aspects of the human consciousness and understanding, and how human beings are with the sufferings and sadness, as well as their selfish nature. So here he wishes to generate the idea of joy of possession in love, or the tortures of frustration, the agonies of thought and the decision, the responsibilities of our solitary selfhood. So here we can see that his poetry is with this kind of aspect of the unconcerned nature towards the joy and the sadness. Then only you will see that the poetry is more than philosophy. So with this, I wish to go for the another poet, Gabriel Okera, the mystic drum. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here, as you know that how romantic poets, classical, neoclassical, Victorian poets, and metaphysical poets, have their own, concerns of the nature as well as the love, and in their poetic genius and the creativity, they had, tried to look at that kind of philosophy through the vehicle of poetry. And upon the wings of the poesy, they wish to fly from the sordid realms of their life into the dream and coming back to the reality. So when you look at that escape from the reality, because they had the sufferings of their life as well as pains, and they wish to go into the dream, but they are not escapists. They are for a short while going into the dream and coming back to the reality. As you have seen Dream on Monkey Mountain by Derek Walcott and Congi's Harvest, the way how they are in the reality of the world. And similarly here, the poetic creativity, genius, subtle thought and subtle expression, here you will see that, because of speech, sounds and comparison and language shows crystal clearly with the vividness and lucid expression, and to show that kind of ordinary human perception which does not have any kind of fruitful results of the human life. So here the poet had tried to establish that kind of unconcerned nature through his poetry, whether it is Petticoat Green or the wedding in September, and here we have the plum tree. All these are all from this kind of background to summarize the thematic concerns of the poet here, Nielsen, that how he emerged from this kind of background that shows how post-colonial poetry is unconcerned and how it is reshaping the human life with this kind of unconcerned nature. For instance, if you look at the negation of the negation, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. If there will be a birth, there will be death. If there will be a death, there will be a birth. So here, regenerating the idea of the human life towards the unconcerned of the death. Okay, so here you can see Nielsen's poetry from this kind of background, and then we'll come to the another poet, Gabriel, the mystic drum. Can anyone of you read this poem? This background of the poet. Hello, students. Hello. Are you all here? Can you hear me or not? Nobody is responding. Are you also away from the lecture, like poets, away from the material world? Hello, hello, students. Are you all there? Yeah, please, can you read page number 108, Gabriel Lucera, the Mystic Drum? Can one of you please can you read? Yes.
Born in 1920, is a Nigerian poet and novelist. He belongs to a place called in Nigeria. He was educated at Government College and at Higher College. After his graduation in Bangalore, he worked as a good-minded engineer. He also worked for the government press in journalism. In late 1950s, he studied journalism in Pakistan. On his return, he worked as a government information officer in the Eastern Nigerian government. During the civilian war, he was director of cultural affairs for the Biafran.
Yes, sir.
In 1969, he brought the United States with Chinua Achebe to promote the Biafran war of the reverse to century.
Sir, voice not clear, sir.
Poetry first up in magazine.
Kamala garu.
So we'll come back to Gabriel Lucera, was born in 1921, Nigerian poet and a novelist. He belongs to called Beaumont in Western Nigeria, educated in Government College, and here Umara and Yaba Higher College. And if you look at his background from this kind of Government College, he had studied in a Government College, and how he emerged during the Civil War. Lucera was Director of Cultural Affairs for the Biafran Ministry of Information. And if you look at how he had the association with Chinua Achebe to promote the Biafran head of the Rivers State and Cultural Center. Ocara's poetry appeared in magazines, including the first issue of Black Orpheus in 1957. The Voice, a poetic novella, appeared in London in 1964. Unfortunately, during the Civil War, many of his manuscripts were lost, and his long-awaited collection, the Fisherman's Invocation, contained only 33 poems. So like that here, you will see how his attachment with the Government College as well as Civil War, and how he had emerged as a Commonwealth poet, and he had received the Commonwealth Poetry Prize. And his background, that roots of Ocera poetry are the folklore and imagery of his Ijwa background, and his self-directed reading of Wordsworth, Keats, Hawkins, and Dylan Thomas. And here, if you look at his Ijwa spiritual concepts are transposed into English, yet his lyrical free verse is clear to even now Ijwa reader. It is distinguished by its assured idiom and lucid musicality. Hello, students. Hello.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
here,
yes, sir.
if you look at
Yes,
the
sir.
post-colonial conception of the motherland, tradition, culture, and language, here Gabriel Lucera emerged from his Isa community, and his spiritual concepts are more close to his language of his tradition or culture. Similarly, here he had tried to use the idiom and lucid musicality. So the way how he had the background of his own tradition and culture, and at the same time he had explored that kind of spirituality with the Isa, as well as the background of self-directed reading of Wordsworth, Keats, and Hopkins. Dylan Thomas, and in his poetry we can see that universal, as well as here the thematic concerns deals with the conflict between tradition and modernity. So when you look at the concept of the post-colonialism, here established tradition versus modernity, slavery versus master. Okay, so homesickness, the sufferings of war, and the spiritual quest. So here this is what how post-colonialism reflects in Gabriel Okara's poetry, with this kind of stand of the tradition versus the modernity, colonizer versus the colonizer, as well as the homesickness and quest for identity, and here sufferings of war. So when you look at the civil war during that time, and how he had the influence of Wordsworth, Keats, Dylan Thomas, and here the other poets like Hopkins. So here he had that kind of stand of his post-colonial poetry, and how he wishes to emerge from Isa spirituality to explore that kind of silence of untold stories, voice of voiceless, and he had tried to explore that sea of death, migrating strokes, and symbolizing the restless soul and pure source beyond the grasp of human aspirations. Here Okara has infused his poetry with images of his Nigerian and Delta birthplace. His writings show the conceptualization and the syntax of his native language. So here, the way how, according to George Orwell, language is a political tool. So he had used his traditional language, native language, to transform the identity of that culture and tradition into global level. So this is what here, how he conceptualized the syntax of the native language, Aija with English diction and grammar. So this is what here you can see Pidgin and Creole, as well as the cosmopolitan vocabulary, and against the marginals, whatever their concerns of the tradition and the culture and the language. So this is what here he had infused the kind of sense of belongingness of his tradition against the modernity. Hello, one of you unmuted your device. Can you mute your device, please? Hello, somebody unmuted your device. Until unless you mute your device. Hello. Yeah. So when you look at the difference between Nielsen's poetry and Gabriel Okara's poetry, then you will see that one is on the nature and love, the other one is on the post-colonialism, which is making sense of the tradition versus the modernity, and the kind of sense of belongingness. So here we can see how it had infused with this kind of use of the language of their motherland. And then here you can see how the poem Mystic Drum is a typical African poem in terms of content and form, and it employs the African ethos to aesthetically create a distinct African poem. So as we know that our Telugu poem from our traditional background. Similarly here, as a Nigerian poet, he too had that kind of background to show his language from Aija spirituality, as well as here the mystic drum beat in my inside, and fishes danced in the rivers, and men and women danced on land to the rhythm of my drum. So here when you look at this kind of beating the drums and the way how it generates the music towards the nature, towards the seashore, towards the kind of the fishes which are also enjoying in the river because of the drum beating. So here he had emerged as this kind of poet because of his staunch stand of his mother tongue and the culture or tradition. When we first read the poem, it appears to be vague and mysterious. Hello, students.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. For instance, if anybody will read the Telangana poetry, or a song, then you will see that the poem may be, vague and mysterious, but you will see, until unless you know the language of that concern, then you will see that the song may be close to heart rather than your mind. So this is what here you can understand how its obscurity compels the reader to arrive at a meaning which the lines appear to elude. A closer reading of it, however, draws attention to its form rather than merely to its meaning, and perhaps the meaning lies in its form. So here you can understand that the poetic genius and creativity of Gabriel Okara from this kind of background of his Isa spirituality, and how he had established that kind of music, with the drums, and how the beauty of the nature also enjoyed with this kind of, music of drums. And here the way how it is more meaningful with the form rather than the language. So here you can see that poet had established the language with the form to have that kind of meaning of the lines. Here poet beats the drum, there is a spontaneous response to it in the form of dance. For instance, if you look at a poem like or a song like Telugu background, then you can understand how the poetic genius and creativity of their concerns of the language or culture or tradition. So like that, you can see here Gabriel Okara's poetry from the Ija spirituality and the language and the beating music of the drums, and how fishes in the river and men and women on land swayed and danced to its rhythmic and continuous beat in consonance with the beating of the drum. Outside, a mystic drum beats in his own consciousness. So here the way how he is going to internalize, how he is going to become the insider of that outside music. So this is what here you can see that the poem is with this kind of mystical background, form and language, and here he had tried to bring that kind of beauty of the nature which is very close to the human consciousness. But standing behind a tree with leaves around her waist, she only smiled with a shake of her head. The pronoun she refers to the nature goddess who looks beautiful but evasive and happy. So here this is what how Ija spirituality, which generates the idea of happiness through the poetic genius and the creativity, and even the nature also receives. And here he referred nature as she, and here you can see how it is dancing with that kind of happiness, like here a bride. Okay, so when the beating sound of the drum pauses for a while, so this is what you can understand how the poetic genius and the creativity shows that kind of creativity, imagery, as well as the sound of the drums and the repetition of lines. It's certainly deliberate and helps to convey a powerful statement about nature. So here, for instance, if you look at Maladi, Gaddar and Korinthi Venkanna, how they are also emerged from this kind of background of their culture or tradition and language. So here, then you can understand how he had tried to establish this kind of whatever the tradition versus the modernity. So here, if you look at the classical music or the way how it is quite against to the pop culture or any kind of dance of the modern society. So this is the way how here the poet had that kind of his cultural representation in this poem, that how it is with a free verse pattern, has no rhyme, but it has hypnotic rhythm is distinct. So this is what how the poem had this kind of touch of its Aiza spirituality, and a poem should not mean but be. Perhaps this poem falls into such a category where the poet does not attempt to tell something or to convey a message. Here the response of the reader will be conveyed as and when they are going to understand that how the poet had that kind of consciousness of his personal as well as his tradition. And then here I think the immediate aim of African writing is to put into the whirlpool of literature, the African point of view, to put across how the African thinks. So this is what here in this poem you can see that how the poet had tried to bring to the notice of the reader that how he had this kind of poem as a mysterious and use of the language, and the mother is gold, and Adrian Roscoe says of Okara, like all poets, he had to find his own voice, and his wide reading in Western literature made this a difficult task, though it equipped him with the apparatus of a recognizably modern idiom. So here, when we see the mystic drum, is an excellent example of his own voice, which is combination of African nationalism and transnational universality. So here, the way how he had the authentic experience of the Nigerians identity and behavior, as well as here you can understand that yeah. So here, if you look at that authentic experience of a Nigerian poet, which is with that kind of identity as well as the his concerns, and here, if you look at that kind of Nigerians were colonized by Britain, and here you will see how they wish to break that colonized their culture from the colonizer. And here, if we look at that, how Gabriel Okara had tried to look at the poetry from this kind of unconventional point of view, as well as the motherland's influence of the language and other aspects of their history. So this is what here we have seen Gabriel Okara's Mother Mystic Drum, and we'll now come to one of the other poem of Gabriel Okara, Once Upon a Time. Can anyone of you read one first paragraph, please? Hello? Hello, students? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can anyone of you read? Are you able to understand the Mystic Drum by Gabriel Okara? Nigerian poet, what is he saying in the poem? What is the theme of the poem? Yes, can anyone of you respond? Hello? Hello, students?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Pardon? What are the thematic concerns of the Nigerian poet here, Gabriel Okara, in the Mystic Drum? Tradition versus modernity, homesickness, and the sufferings of war and the spiritual quest. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello, students?
Yes, sir.
Please, one of you read Okara, page number 118. Hello?
Okara, one of Africa's gifted poets, derived much from the African folklore tradition. Often he draws from this source and portrays African culture. Besides, he has a penchant for African music, and this was clearly evident in the music, the mystic drum. Yes, sir. Spirit time is then going to takes that.
Hello.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here we can see Gabriel Lucra's poetry from this kind of African culture, and here he had that kind of African music, and in Mystic Drum, as well as here Once Upon a Time is also a poem that takes us back into time. Okay, so here if you look at this kind of background of the poem and the poet, then we can understand how he had established this kind of poet's childhood and growing years. So here, how he was once upon a time, and how he has been growing with that kind of consciousness of self and society, and how he addresses his son, and in the process we find his own view about life, values, and the change scenario in the quality of human life. The poem begins thus. So if you look at this kind of background of the poet as a persona, we can understand how he had, looking back his past. Once upon a time, there was a king lived. So here, if you look at that kind of background of each and everyone's past, and it will be reflected in the future. So child is the father of hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Child is the father of man. Okay. So here, child is the father of man, of anyone's life. Here we have to go through the childhood. So this is how he had tried to explore the stories of the Nigerian children, and here the poet had tried to establish that kind of identity. Once upon a time, I was like my son as a child, but now I've grown up with this kind of is what the concerns of all these aspects. So this is how once upon a time, son, they used to laugh with their hearts and laugh with their eyes, but now they only laugh with their teeth. So while their wise book block cold eyes search behind my shadow. So here image of that aspect of the past and the present, which lost its happiness, which had in the past, of the irony of the human life in modern time. So here we also tries to peep into the past, that how the past is so happy best moment in our life, but now it is with all the manacles, chains of human sufferings. So here the poet had looked at the modern society without any kind of happiness, and they laugh with their teeth rather than their eyes. So look at the way how tradition versus modernity. Can you hear me here? Hello.
Sir?
Can you look at the poem from this kind of background of the tradition versus the modernity? Hello. Yes. One of you are. Yeah. Please tell me.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Please tell me. What are you saying here? What is he saying in this poem? Once upon a time.
He is saying about the past life, which was full of happiness.
They laugh with their eyes, but now laughing with their teeth. So it is the irony of the modern man. Okay. So when you look at the past with the glory of that happiness and which lost in the modern age. So here the poem had this kind of touch of the paradoxical, elements. The world of his son is no longer the same according to Okara. They now only laugh with their teeth. So here, what is he saying? That the way he had the childhood of his own, and now the childhood which is away from him, but he had the sweet memories of his life. But now, if we look at his son, he does not have any kind of that laugh with the eyes. Here he laughs with the teeth. So this is what here.
Artificial.
What?
Artificial life they are living.
Yeah,
now.
that's good. Yeah. So fantasy. Okay. So the lustrous eyes cannot cheat so well. Who says here? In O2 Nightingale. Okay. So here, when you look at the reference of T.S. Eliot, human speech as the chattering of apes, we profess that by the use of language we can communicate with others. So this is what the loss of faith of humanity in modern times, as you said, the artificiality rather than the natural life. So the tragedy of modern life is that people almost forgotten how to laugh. Here, people are with the WhatsApp and the other electronic gadgets, and they lost that the way how to laugh. Okay, so this is what here Gabriel Okra objectives appear clear and precise. He would like to introduce the world to African thought process and bring to the forefront the African point of view. This was his aim, yet he faced the problem of realizing this dream in a manner that preserved his artistic identity as an African. And like all poets, he had to discover his own voice. His vast reading of Western literature made this rather complex, but it provided him with the tool of a distinctly modern idiom. So this is what here we can see how he is with this kind of stand of the post-colonialism, and then how he wishes to establish that kind of tradition versus the modernity. And here it is hopeless and it is in despair, as artificial does not show any kind of natural hope of survival. So the poet analyzes another common convention that here, if you look at feel at home, come again, they say, and when I come again and feel at home once, twice, there will be no thrice, for then I find doors shut on me. So here you will see that if anybody comes at once, okay, we receive. If
recording stopped,
if somebody will comes next time, we may close the door, we may shut on. No, so this is what here. If you look at this kind of verbal sound, polite, courteous and warm, and requesting to feel comfortable in their house. So here we feel to invite a guest at once, but not twice and thrice. So if he comes thrice, we will shut the door. So here, the modern age people are unconcerned to the human values. So this is what here the social hypocrisies that poet experience taught him several important lessons. He candidly admits this fact to his son. So I have learned many things, son. I have learned to wear many faces, like dresses, home face, office face, street face, host face, cocktail face, with all their conforming smiles, like a fixed portrait smile. So here he is the critique of the modern civilized people's fashions. So we have to, show that kind of each and every face, street face, host face, office face, home face, whatnot, everything, cocktail face, no matter as a one, person, you have to show many faces. At the center of every poem is, here you will see that how he has the kind of juxtaposing contrast that express his confusion and dissatisfaction. So this is what here, like a fixed portrait smile. So here, when you look at that, how Pokhara tells his son that even if late, he has learned his lessons. So in his life, he had that kind of, aspect of his personal, whatever the experience that he has to, tell his son that he learned it a little late, but he is in the reality. And I have learned to laugh with only my teeth and shake hands out my heart. I have also learned to say goodbye when I mean good riddance, to say glad to meet you without being glad, and to say it's been nice talking to you. So after being bored, so this is what here he is with this kind of juxtaposition of the tradition and the modernity. And here in the next stanza, but believe me, son, I want to be what I used to be. So here, no matter of his modern age, he wishes to be, as he wishes of his life once upon a time. But time changes, but he does not like to change his attitude towards his human concern. When I was like you, I want to unlearn all these muting things. Most of all, I want to relearn, unlearn, and here to learn how to laugh. For my laugh in the mirror shows only my teeth, like a snake's bare fangs. So this is what here he mentions, that he wishes to learn many things of his age, unlike his son. But here he wishes to say unlearn and relearn. The use of the two words unlearn and relearn, learn, unlearn and relearn is significant, as it reveals the poet's efforts to absolve himself of his tainted experience. So this is what here you can see how he wishes to show, all these aspects that the natural and artificial, way of human concern. How to laugh? Show me how. I used to laugh and smile once upon a time when I was like you. So here, this is what he concludes, that how the poem is this kind of representation of tradition way back to centuries of his Nigerian culture and tradition, made them to show that kind of human concern with their whatever the laugh with the eyes, as well as to show that kind of touch of their human life with the values. So when we look at all these, then here the poet had tried to establish that all these mood and negativity of the father's voice, and it is reflective of full of bitterness towards the Europeans and their culture, and no regret at having trusted Europeans. So the that mood is negative and the tone is with this kind of advisory, caring, and concern for young son, and the father does not want him to make the same mistake. So here he wishes to see his son with his human concern rather than to commit a blunder or a mistake. Okay, so here we can see it advises and the poem will teach us that how the relationship between the father and the son, from this kind of natural touch, as well as the relationship with the clashing cultures and values, and how do we need to have that kind of honesty and trust and dependability. And here when you look at the Nigerian tradition and culture survive the contact with modern Western culture and its values. So here we have to show what you are, don't show what you are not. Okay, so you should have the kind of human concern from your background, but don't act like a smart as others will instruct you or others to show. Okay, so here we should not imitate the Western culture in against to the tradition of our Nigerian culture or tradition. So here in this poem of Gabriel Okena, here Mystic Drum as well as Once Upon a Time and Nielsen's Petticoat Green are all shows that kind of natural way of human life, which is not corrupted, which is free from this kind of hatred or that kind of manipulations of the modernity or that kind of westernized culture or society. So here in this poem we can see that how he had established his identity of his childhood days. And here we can remind that child is the father of man, as and when you look at yourselves from this kind of happiness of your eyes when you laugh, and if it is artificial, there is no any kind of touch of human values. So here it is nothing but the loss of the human life in the modern age, that the way how he had tried to criticize that human life from this kind of background, that how the modern society always tries to impose the culture and the tradition which lack the human values, human touch, and the way they have to live in the lap of the nature. So this is what how they are in the concrete jungle of the modernity, which lacks the abundance of human values, or that kind of the life which is making sense of the peace, happiness. So here the poet tried to remind the modern man that their life is good for nothing, as well as their purposeless life will not have any kind of any kind of fruitful results of the human life. So this is what here how he had tried to establish post-colonial concerns in this a poem, that one should stay back with the culture, tradition, language to show the concerns of the human values, which are uncorrupted, which are uncomparable, which are unmatched to the Western culture. So this is what here richness of our culture should not be corrupted, should not be spoiled, should not be underestimated because of the modernity. So this is what here African poets had tried to establish their identity as well as their genius and the creativity which is emerging from this kind of folklore, and the way how they had tried to engage the language from the kind of ample resources of the nature, culture, and tradition. So like that, here we can understand how this a poem, Gabriel Cras, Once Upon a Time, and a Petticoat Green, Mystic Drum, and here each and every thematic concern of the poem shows that how the poets had tried to go beyond the contemporary society, which is good for nothing, which is a concrete jungle, which does not show any kind of fruitful life of human values. So here the poet had tried to remind the way how we have to show our human values with the mother land, and language, culture, tradition, and human relationship without any kind of corruption or modernity. So here the way how the poets tone, mood, as well as their thematic concerns, how he had tried to remind the modern generation to know that African culture or Nigerian identity had that kind of their treasure trove of their tradition or culture or language, and the way how they wish to restore it no matter of the modernity. So here you can understand that how the poet had tried to touch each and every aspect of the Nigerian identity to show their uncorrupted nature towards the human values. So with this, I wish to stop here, and I completed the Unit 3, Unit 4, and Unit 1 of the 5, 6 classes. I took I think 6 classes it seems. So we'll see in next class the rest of the other units. Hello students.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, yes, tell me. Yeah, please.
As we have completed Unit 3, 4, and 5 units, sir. Till now we have completed 6 classes that.
No, here Unit 1 and Unit 3 and Unit 4. No, 3 units completed.
Okay, sir.
I have to complete
1, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I have to complete
Post-colonialism, imperialism, nationalistic. Okay.
all these are over. The beginning classes, no. So please go through that whichever the units completed so far, and you will see that how gradually there is a change in your understanding the post-colonialism, how it is a break from the colonialism, and how it emerged from this kind of exploitation, and that kind of suppression, and the way how the colonized people are emerging as writers and poets of their concerns of the motherland. This is what in Unit 1 and 3 and 4 we have seen that how Caribbean and Canadian literatures emerging from this kind of background. So this is the way to understand how post-colonial literature uplifts the society to look at the literature from this kind of ethnic literature, as well as that kind of voice of voiceless and silence of untold stories. So with this, I stop here, and then we'll see in next class the rest of the other units. Okay.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Hello. Yeah, please. Yes. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, thank you one and all. We'll see you in next class.
Sir, can we get important questions
No,
from
let
that?
me finish the rest of the other 2 units. No, then we'll see. The first, what you do here, you go through the unit 1 to 5. Okay, from unit 1 to 5. If you go through that, then we'll update you of that assignment paper as well as the important questions of each and every unit. Okay.
Okay.
So let me finish the rest of the other units. So thank you one and all. Right.
Thank you, sir.